I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Beebe? Here. Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi?
Here.
Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford? Ms. Bradford is not in attendance. Mr. Garvey? Here. Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Guillo? Mr. Guillo is not in attendance.
He's here.
Ms. Hill? Present. Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Dr. Moranti? Present. Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Ms. Orange Jones is not in attendance. Mr. Romer? Mr. Romer is not in attendance. Ms. Smith? Here. Ms. Smith is present. You have a quorum.
First item is on page 1, item 2.1, consideration of an update regarding the study of the state accountability system and value-added model. The recommendation is to receive.
Do we have a motion to receive?
So moved.
And do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Garvey.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. We have a motion and a second. Superintendent.
Members, I thank you for considering receiving the motion. You are later in the day going to be considering an 8G allocation to fund this study, and so that will be significantly later in the day. As a result, I wanted just to make sure that you have the information and have an update on this. You'll remember that a couple of meetings ago, you had commissioned the department to work with BESE staff to have a study done of our value-added method and its role in the accountability and evaluation systems. I am very thankful to Executive Director Heather Cope and to our staff, Hannah Deitch and Jessica Bagian, for their work on this. We have identified, per your instruction, a Louisiana-based value-added academic expert. I'm going to pass out his CV and biography here to the two board members. If you could just pass that down. Thank you. And we are ready to proceed with the study. We hope to then bring the study and its results back to the board over the next several months. This is contingent on you, of course, helping us to fund that study through an 8G allocation. Let me talk for a minute just about the gentleman with whom we have been speaking on this issue. His name is Dr. Douglas N. Harris. He is an economics professor and has a fully endowed chair at Tulane University. Dr. Harris has recently published a book called Value-Added Measures in Education, which was published by the Harvard University Education Press. He is thought to be one of the nation's most prolific writers and important analysts of value-added measures, and we're very blessed that he is a resident of the city of New Orleans and is an employee and a faculty member, a tenured faculty member at Tulane. It strikes me that Dr. Harris is an obvious choice to conduct this study. You have given us the authority to conduct this study ourselves and to report back to you with the report, so we're not here today to ask approval of Dr. Harris as the conductor and the academic charged with this, but instead just to give you an update on the status of it. And I wanted to tell you how thrilled I am and how fortunate I feel we are that Dr. Harris is here in Louisiana to conduct this kind of work. And really, Tulane, frankly, has committed to education, and this is a good example of what Tulane, under Dr. Scott Cowan's leadership, really is trying to do. So I'm happy that it's able to serve this purpose. Again, you won't be considering this in any vote until later in the day, when you are going to consider redirecting a portion of the HE funding to this study, so that this study, which you commissioned, can be funded. Thank you, Madam Chairman. We just wanted to provide that report. Happy to have a discussion with board members.
Dr. Beebe. Good morning. Mr. White, certainly I applaud the fact that this gentleman is from Louisiana, and I would have to ask, I know you said that he's published books. Does his research reflect what numerous other researchers have indicated as it relates to VAM, the fact that VAM should not be used as a punitive measure when it comes to employment decisions? So, I mean, I know very little about him and his research, and while I think it's, you know, I applaud the board's effort or the intent to have the VAM model studied, we must also realize that the proposal or the act to further review the VAM model falls short of addressing the concerns communicated by our educators. The two issues at hand are trust and transparency. And I think the fact that, you know, that you and Ms. Cope have chosen this individual, particularly when there are known individuals, those who have indicated concerns and that they have expressed that they would like to be a part of the research, and that we're just closing the door on those individuals and those concerns, I think that we're doing a disservice to our educators. I think that we should use VAM, based on the research, as an instrument to help us assist our educators, our teachers, to help them improve their skills. And I know that you indicated, as I have read, there's another item later on in the meeting in another committee. I think it would cost us, taxpayers, approximately $57,000 to have a review, when in reality we may be a bit premature at this point by approving this expenditure, when there are discussions, as I've heard, among legislators, that they would like to take a closer view or to do a review of legislation that addresses teacher evaluation, particularly the VAM model. So I think it would be, it would warrant us to maybe delay this expenditure until such time as we know what is going to happen in the legislature.
Well, we can certainly have that discussion when that item is up. I just want to reiterate what I'm here to report, which is that this board voted to commission the department to work with BESE staff to engage in a study of the Louisiana value-added model through an outside academic expert. A educator whose the title of his most recent book, published by Harvard, is Value-Added Measures in Education, happens to be a tenured faculty member at a university that's based in Louisiana. We have commissioned him to engage in that study, and I'm providing you an update. Later in the day, when we hear the HE allocation, you all certainly will have a vote on whether to allow us to fund that study. But again, you all commissioned the study. We are prepared to do it with a world-renowned economist whose specific Harvard-published research is considered one of the leading pieces of literature in this arena, who is Louisiana-based. It seems to me like a good proposition, and we certainly look forward to hearing your thoughts on allocating the funds to allow us to do it. Thank you.
Ms. Hill.
Yes. One of the questions I have, how long would his contract consist of? What is the timeline in regards to
We have not established that as of yet, and you are not voting on a contract today that has anything to do with this gentleman. You are voting as to whether or not to allocate us the funds to engage in this study. And I wanted, in the spirit of transparency, to provide you information as to how we are going about doing it.
Okay. My next question would be, what would his team consist of? Would it just be only Dr. Harris conducting the study, or would he have a team that will work along with him?
As with most research centers, he has research associates who will help him do some of the analysis, yes.
Okay, and then would there be a task force developed under the governance of BESE in regards to his findings and then reported to BESE? I mean, would we create a task force? I think that would level the mistrust that the community have within the department, and of course as the board as well. So will we looking to develop a task force that will report, and they can come together and discuss the findings of the value-added model, and they can have discussions? Is that something that you guys have looked into or thought about as a department?
There is an accountability commission that you have commissioned. You voted on the membership of that committee. That committee explicitly is charged with hearing the results of this, as well as you, obviously charged. And the accountability commission's job is to advise BESE on how BESE goes about its work related to statistical, analytic, and accountability policies like this. So absolutely.
Any other board discussion? Okay, we have one public comment. Lee Barrios. Good morning.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher, St. Tammany. I would have hoped that there would have been several options offered and that they would be discussed before any kind of vote is taken. And I realize, Superintendent White, you said they're not going to vote right now on who. But I've done some research myself with some others and found some pretty prominent people that I'd like to recommend, and I emailed all of you these suggestions. The first one comes from the National Education Policy Center in Colorado. Their mission is to produce and disseminate high-quality peer-reviewed research to inform education policy. Their director, Kevin Wellner, is professor at University of Colorado at Boulder, authored and edited 7 books and more than 70 articles. Another member of their organization, Dr. Gene Glass, actually, he's a research professor at the University of Colorado and a Regents Professor Emeritus from Arizona State, trained originally in statistics, very important when you're studying FAM. His interests broadened to include psychotherapy, research, evaluation, methodology, and policy analysis, etc. Then there's another at Rutgers, Dr. Bruce Baker. And again, I've sent you the information about these people and their expertise. And another, Dr. Francesca Lopez from Marquette University. I would hope that you'd look at these and consider. I know NEPC does their work primarily without a fee, which makes them, helps them to be unbiased. They get their funding from grants. They're a nonprofit. And I'm not sure about the other people, but it would be nice to have, to at least eliminate the concept of bias from this sort of a study. And I might even suggest that more than one person or organization be commissioned or asked to do this. And I also, in this particular case, I would suggest that someone not deeply ensconced in what's going on in Louisiana, and certainly not from Tulane University, would be a better choice for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Having no more board discussion, I believe we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any objections to this motion? Having none, the motion carries. Next item.
On page 2, item 3.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 746, Louisiana Standards for State Certification of School Personnel regarding endorsements to existing teaching certificates. The recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
May I have a motion? Motion by Ms. Bovee. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gill. Is there any discussion on this item?
Members, just a brief synopsis of this. For years, as you know, in Louisiana, we have had alternate certification programs that are provided through providers that are not just higher education-based providers. Of course, higher education colleges and universities remain our primary source of teachers, but there are also some alternate route programs. Oftentimes, as you'll recall, there's additional coursework required for teachers to go get their to get endorsements. So, for example, I was a high school English teacher. I may seek an endorsement in special education to allow me to teach students with disabilities generally. The providers that provide alternate certification are not themselves allowed to currently to provide endorsements. Only colleges and universities are able to provide endorsements. And we are here today at the request of school systems who have asked us to allow non-college and university certifiers to also provide endorsements. In other words, these are institutions that for years have been allowing, and you have approved as a board, to certify teachers. We are simply asking that you allow them an endorsement capacity as well. If you don't, it essentially means that the teacher either has to go through a certain set of providers, some of which are not available in given geographies, or they have to go back and get an entirely new certificate. We're asking you to have all providers have the same rights and opportunities within the system. Thank you.
Great. Any board comment? Dr. Beebe.
Thank you. Superintendent White, so as I understand, universities, entities other than universities, and I do know that we have, BESE has already approved some groups to provide this service. The concern I have, and I do know that I was contacted by a constituent relative to a school district providing the endorsement. So how can we be assured that the quality is in place through these non-university providers?
Well, first of all, you will have approval over them. So just like any provider, you will have to approve these entities being able to provide such credentials, or such endorsements. So I want to be clear, this is not us making a decision. This is us simply giving a signal to these providers that if they want to come to BESE and ask for approval, they may. Now, at such time, we would be compelled to provide you information as to are they doing their current job well, certifying teachers. One way of doing that is what we already do in Louisiana, and we're a national forerunner in this. This was done by many of you, predates me, which is that we measure the impact on student learning of these various programs. In fact, we can look at the New Teacher Project, we can look at UL, we can look at LSU, we can look at Southern, and we can say, this is what the impact on student learning of their graduates is. And that's one way, for example, of looking at whether or not they've been effective. We would bring you that information and you would be able to approve it. All the school systems are asking of us is, hey, allow us to say to these organizations that they can provide endorsements if BESE approves them to do it.
Okay, now as it, excuse me, as it stands, I think I read in the policy, it may not be this specific policy, teachers could have a teacher certification, in an area, and then pursue an endorsement through a school district. And so, with that being said, who provides the coursework, or are we moving away from coursework and it would just be somewhat of an internship situation or experience?
It would have to be per the state's regulations regarding coursework. In other words, there are still requirements for what actually happens during such a program. If you have a special ed endorsement, for example, there are requirements that are in our regulations for what you have to have done to achieve it. The requirements they overlap between what an alternative certification provider is required and what a higher education provider. So the requirements are still there.
And I'm just curious, if there are any university representatives, and I haven't heard from anyone from those departments to voice concerns. I would, if anybody's here, would certainly ask to hear the concerns that they may have, because I am, I guess, traditional in my view. I participated in the certification process, went to a university, and again have the great concern that we may be watering down expectations, which would certainly prove devastating to the quality of educational services rendered to our students. And I mean, it's just somewhat challenging for me to approve a policy of non-educational providers. I mean, these are people at the university level. They're trained professionals. Now, granted, I understand the impact of professional learning. I support that, and I know we have a lot of success through that the hands-on professional learning, but at the same time, I have a respect for the university providers in this area. So I'm just having mixed emotions, if you will, and I guess I would have to do a paradigm shift here, but I just think that, you know, we have established expectations with university providers, and I value the work of university providers to say that we're just going to continue to allow other non-education providers, if you will, provide this service.
Well, I think they're all education providers, and I think we should, you know, anytime that you all hear a provider, see a provider's request to be able to grant endorsements, you should look at all the information. We should see, are they really effective or not? I would tell you, we've got highly effective programs that are non-traditional. We've got highly effective programs that are traditional. You know, so I think you should just look at the quality when it comes in front of you. You're not being asked to today decide on any providers, and as a result of this decision, there won't be any providers decided on. But it opens up a gate to new providers that school systems are asking us to allow be here, at least to make their case.
Okay, so we have a few comments. Jean Burns.
Thank you. My name is Jean Burns. I'm Associate Commissioner for Teacher and Leader Initiatives for the Louisiana Board of Regents. I'm here to provide information pertaining to this revision to the policy. The Department of Education has shared information about the revisions that would be made to this particular policy. I have shared those revisions with the College of Education deans within our state, and there are two needs that we are asking that BESE ensure that will be addressed if this policy is approved. The first need pertains to ensuring that there will be a rigorous process that will be used in order to approve the private providers that will be approved to offer these programs. What this does do is that it's going to be opening up areas of certification that require an in-depth level of knowledge, such as in gifted education and hearing impaired, visually impaired, significant disabilities, librarian. Those are areas that go over and beyond the current areas of alternate certification that are being offered within by our private providers within the state. It's going to be very important that the faculty or the instructors that are teaching these particular areas for endorsement have an in-depth level of knowledge about the areas in which they're teaching. Within our universities, these add-on certifications often are at the graduate level, and the faculty who are teaching these courses do have an in-depth knowledge. Also, it is our understanding that these particular programs will require an equivalent number of clock hours as what we require for credits within our universities. But we just want to remind BESE that within many graduate programs, the work that occurs goes over and beyond the clock hours that are in class. Prior to my being on leave from the university, I taught courses in gifted education at the graduate level. In class, students learned about different types of strategies, went back to their classrooms, they applied them, they came back, they discussed them in class, they did case studies. Those were all done outside of class. So here again, as these programs are being reviewed for approval to ensure that there's quality within those programs so that the teachers participate are going to come out with an in-depth level of knowledge about whatever it is that they're supposed to be teaching. And then the second need deals with ongoing review of the programs. Currently, with our universities, they all have to undergo review through SACS accreditation, then they undergo review for national accreditation for NCAPE as well as TAC. We want to commend the board for the fact that you've now adopted CAPE. Those standards are going to be even more rigorous within the future. And then the state also reviews the programs at that same time. Currently, with private providers, they undergo initial review, They undergo a review a year later once they've been implemented, but there's no ongoing review beyond that point in time. One of the needs that was expressed by our College of Education deans was that the private providers be held to the same expectations as the universities as far as the review is concerned, and this is ongoing review. It is true that we do have value-added results for our teacher prep programs, but they're primarily for elementary teachers, and these are areas of endorsement and certification that go well beyond elementary education. So we just ask that if you move forward with the approval of this particular policy, please ensure that there's a rigorous process for selection of who is going to be approved to offer these programs, and that there's a rigorous process for the ongoing review. One last comment, as a result of the CCSO grant that we have in the state through NTEP, we're in the process of having discussions of changes for program approval within the future, and so I feel confident that that's going to be a process to ensure that both private providers and universities are undergoing rigorous review of their programs on an ongoing basis. But that's not yet to the point of approval, and we just ask that you ensure that as we move forward in the future, that there is an ongoing review process for both the universities and the private providers.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And I guess maybe this question might be for the superintendent, but just for some background information, in layman's terms, what is the real reason that, how does this really help the locals?
It essentially opens up more avenues for them to get endorsements for teachers, for example, when they are short on ELL or ESL teachers, for example, when they're short on teachers for students with disabilities. Oftentimes they'll pursue those endorsements for current teachers who are certified. This just opens up more avenues.
Okay, so this would basically help those school systems that maybe are not located close to a university?
Sure.
Or not have access to what ones would that live in a college and university near campus.
Correct.
And so why we need this is because the locals basically need the help in trying to get certified. Are most of the people that are going to be trying to get the alternative certification already certificated?
We believe so, yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Jamie Finan?
Good morning. I'm Jamie Finan. I am with Louisiana Resource Center for Educators. I'm the director of the Alternative Teacher Certification Program, which was approved in 2003. And basically, I came just to speak to the need of the districts. This is something that I often get calls from HR directors in the districts in the last few years that will say, I have a certified elementary teacher who we've identified that would be a great special education teacher, but at present in 746 their only option is to do university coursework, and that coursework takes a length of time that doesn't allow for them to get that teacher in the position where they need them. Then to Jean's point, I agree with what Jean is saying in terms of, you know, there needs to be standards that are the same whether you're a university or a private provider. And in doing this, if this were to be changed in 746, for example, our program, we offer special ed mild to moderate. That would be something that we would offer an add-on for. However, there are things that our program does not currently offer certification in, for example, gifted and talented endorsement, and that would not be something that we would be looking to provide because I don't have the expert faculty to provide that. So through the process of approving providers, private providers, to allow these add-on certifications, that's why I think it's key to, you know, going back to Jean's point, that to just say that anyone can provide endorsements in any area would not be the case. I would only offer or apply to offer endorsements for things that we currently provide initial certification in.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Moranti.
Could you just give us a little bit information on how your ongoing review process works
Yeah, internally?
and statewide?
Okay. From the state perspective, we receive two different pieces of information. So, for example, in May of 2013, we received our information from the state along with the New Teacher Project and the university programs. And that data, one piece of the data refers to the Title II piece, which shows the praxis exams that people in our programs have passed as required to become certified. Additionally, we received VAM data that showed our program participants and where they fell in the 4 categories ranging from ineffective to highly effective in the core subjects.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Ms. Hill.
Okay.
Oh, Ms. Hill then. Ms. Hill.
Okay. I guess, I don't know, well, this would be directed to Superintendent White. I guess my concern is in regards to the endorsement when you're looking at gifted and talented in the special education arena, because I work diligently in that area, and I know the significance of the training and the skill that an individual will need to work with that population of students. So with that being said, with the additional coursework that is being offered at the university level and internships that they have to require, my major concern will be with these providers, because we're dealing with children that have special needs, whether the special needs may be academic, much more on a higher scale, or academic, much more on a lower scale. So with that being said, Superintendent White, my concern would be, what are the universities doing now that is not effective to make us want to create a policy and such? And what has the superintendent committee revised? Because I hear people saying the districts are saying, but have this been referred to the Superintendent Advisory Council? Because they're working in the district, so they know what's best needed within their school district. So have they looked at this policy and have come up with some solutions or recommended that this is something that is needed across the board throughout the state?
Well, this state has had alternate certification of teachers for almost 20 years from teachers who are from organizations that are not universities. We have regulations governing that, and we have results that actually show that many of them are doing very well. So, look, this is about if you're a superintendent and you either are geographically isolated, you have a shortage of special ed teachers, your best teachers might be able to go in and teach those students with disabilities. The problem is they might have to go through years of coursework at a place that's 50 miles away in order to currently do that. All we're trying to do is say, whatever organization you want to partner with, BESE should at least be able to look at it. Today, we're not even proposing that it even happen. We're just proposing that you be able to look at it. That's what the superintendents have asked us for. If you're really concerned about the policy, all you're doing is not making a decision. You're just setting up so that somebody could bring you an idea. We're not even advancing an idea. We're just allowing somebody to come to you with an idea. And I would take a look at it. I'm also happy to give you the data on the effectiveness of our alternate certification programs. We actually have some of the finest programs in the state. LRCE here in Baton Rouge has a record of success that's impeccable. So certainly welcome your comments, but I don't think we're bringing anything to you today that it's sort of hard to object to it or be for it, because frankly all we're proposing is that they be able to come to you, not that we're bringing you an idea.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, is your question for Ms. Vanna?
This is coming from the superintendents. I wonder if they have a representative here that could address this. Do we know? Do you have anybody that's asked to, from the association, that's asked to address the committee?
Superintendent?
While you're seeking someone, if I may, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do know that we have a tremendous teacher shortage in the districts. In fact, I have some positions I need to fill, and I can't find certified teachers. The need is definitely out there. Again, I am concerned with the quality of services rendered. I do agree with the comments made by Dr. Burns, the fact that she brought forth the concerns for having the rigorous process, and you know, we need to hold all providers to the same expectations. And I could support the process, the policy, if that language was included. But I mean, there is a critical teacher shortage. In fact, I've been saying that, I think, at every board meeting with the reform initiatives, and I attribute the exodus of teachers to many of the reform initiatives. I did warn repeatedly this would happen, and now we have to find some means of ensuring parents that we have quality teachers in those classrooms, or we have someone with the knowledge base. And I do understand that we've had alternative programs, and alternative programs really help school systems meet the highly qualified requirements. So again, going back to what Dr. Burns stated, you know, these are serious concerns that we need to be assured as a board will be addressed.
Let me just give you some examples. And I have to say, I take responsibility for this. Some of these superintendents contacted me and said, do I need to be here? I frankly thought this was so self-evident that I told them not to waste their day and come sit at BESE all day and instead just do their day job. So I take responsibility for that. Here, the districts that have asked for this are Plaquemines, Jefferson, and Lafourche. If you've ever been to Lafourche, which I know many of you obviously have, Dr. Biggie, this is your district.
Yes.
You know that in South Lafourche, just as in Grand Isle, Jefferson, just as in South Plaque, you're talking about a 2-hour drive to get to the nearest institution of higher education. And you're talking about, it is very, very hard. And I've talked to the superintendents of each of these districts to get people to South Plaque, to get people to South Lafourche, and to get people to Grand Isle. Those are the southernmost high schools and school systems in our state. Mm-hmm. They need help in their critical shortage areas, and this is a way they've done it historically with certification. They're just asking, can we take our good teachers and allow them the endorsements to teach through the providers that are already providing these services in the first place? And they're not even asking for permission to do it, they're just asking for permission to come to you with a proposal on doing it. That's all they're asking for.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lee Barrios.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher, St. Tammany. In 1992, I was hired to teach high school gifted classes. All I had at that time, I just received my certification undergraduate degree in education. The law said, and I believe it still says, if I'm not mistaken, that if a certified teacher applies for a position for teaching gifted, she had to be hired over a non-certified, unqualified applicant. And that if an unqualified teacher or a non-certified and gifted teacher was hired, she had to immediately begin her master's degree plus 15 hours of gifted certification to keep the job, which is what I did. As a matter of fact, Dr. Jean Burns was my instructor in graduate school, and believe me, she was rigorous, so she knows what that means. I think your characterization, Superintendent White, of now I forgot the term that you used. Well, I'll skip over that. This proposal reflects one of the problems that results when waivers of qualifications are granted at the top level of our state system of public ed, including our state superintendent. It sets a precedent for all of the personnel. We've already been inundated with unqualified, non-certified, inexperienced instructors at a high price, I might add, such as our $1 million plus a year TFA Corps, New Leaders for New Schools, the New Teacher Project, Advanced Innovation Education Principal School, formerly called Advanced Baton Rouge. Now you're being asked to change the policy to allow, quote, non-university private providers of teacher and or educational leader prep programs to replace policy that called for, quote, an official transcript from a regionally accredited institute. At the same time, the professionally trained and certified teachers are being denigrated and the public's being led to believe we are the primary cause of school failures. At the same time, the schools of education are being criticized as not sufficiently preparing our teachers. This body continues its hypocritical policy of hiring unqualified instructors, particularly for charter schools and as employees of the Department of Ed. Under No Child Left Behind, all children are supposed to have highly qualified teachers. Unobtrusively slipped into the debt deal that Congress passed last October to reopen the federal government after 16 days of impasse and allow the U.S. to keep borrowing money to pay its bills was a provision about school reform that made Teach for America very happy. In language that does not give a hint about its real meaning, the deal extends for 2 years legislation that allows the phrase highly qualified teachers to include students still in teacher training programs. And Teach for America recruits who get 5 weeks of summer training shortly after they graduate from college and are then placed in some of America's neediest schools.
Please begin to wrap up.
Okay. I would also question the propriety of Ms. Orange-Jones participating in this discussion and voting any sort of policy change that obviously would include organizations like Teach for America. Thank you.
Dr. Moranti.
I would hope that I wouldn't be excluded from the discussion because of my position. So I think that we also have to be really aware of some of the real advances in our technology and in our online programs and in our hybrid programs, and how many of the colleges and universities reach out to the rural areas and also go to those rural areas to present the coursework and to supervise the ongoing. So I would probably need to hear more about how the colleges and universities are not meeting the needs in rural areas. And then also my concern would be, I heard that they have an initial process, but I really need to hear the ongoing process of rigor. I'm looking at if they're going to meet the same standards and levels that colleges and universities have to meet with regard to regional and national accreditation standards. I think I probably would need to hear a lot more about that before I could make an informed decision.
Thank you. Candace Watsey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Candace Watsey. This is my 36th year teaching ELA. I spent almost 6 years with Orleans Parish Schools. I spent 10 years at Jesuit High School, where I taught Dr. Moranti's son. Good morning. And this is my 20th year at Mandeville Junior High. Thank you for meeting on a day when I don't have to take a personal day to come here and say good morning and to give you a little update on what it's like in the trenches. I have great concerns about this because I know through my own education, a BA in English from LSU and a master's in education from UNO. I'm secondary certified in English and in gifted education. I moved to New Orleans to do my education. I moved there on purpose because I wanted to go to UNO. Education nowadays has become the great public trough of money, attracting shysters from everywhere. That is the truth, whether we want to believe that or not. And there are many people who are jumping into this business in order to make money. Before we open yet another door, and university people, if you're out there, look out, because they're coming for you next. They've already come for me, and I'm not going to retire. I'm staying here. I'm going to stand and fight. I'm not going away. And I so revere the people that taught me at LSU and at UNO. Great teachers, great professors. And it took me at least 5 years to get my feet under me as a teacher and to master my subject matter. And that's what we need, masters of our subject matter. The last time I spoke here was October a year ago. And someone sitting up here, she's not here today, said, and these were her words, anyone can teach. That is bull. Please, please, I am begging you not to vote the normal way you vote. Please consider the dangers you are allowing into our state. Please think carefully, because education in Louisiana is in tatters, and people have lost heart, and people have retired, but not me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more public comment. Ashley McReynolds.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ashley McReynolds. I'm a parent of a first grader at Broadmoor Elementary who has special needs, and I just wanted to, sitting here listening to this, it really seems like this is setting the stage up to reduce the standards and insurances for parents who have children in special education, that teachers are not going to have, you know, some sort of standard or level of education to teach our kids. And as more and more kids with special needs are being taught in regular ed settings in inclusion, the teachers that are coming to teach our kids do not have any knowledge of what it is like to educate a child with special needs. For example, on my child's first day of first grade this year, his teacher came up to me and said that she had never taught anything worse than ADHD. And my child has a very severe and complex syndrome that she didn't have any knowledge of really what it was like to teach a special ed student. So I really urge and thank Ms. Hill for her, you know, comment about ensuring that teachers who do educate students with disabilities have standards, so we as parents are, you know, assured that they know what they're doing when they're teaching our children every day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That concludes our public comment. Mr. Romer.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's comments today. I'm a little bit shocked we're still talking about this particular issue. We're just asking for the potential opportunity to be brought to us for consideration. In a state where there are many areas of the state that are remote, that have difficulty finding proper certified teachers. And the quality of each program will be judged based on the quality of that program, and we'll have that opportunity to pass that judgment. And ultimately, the hiring decision is by the local district. And I certainly hope the local district would not put a teacher who's unqualified in a particular classroom. This is merely a way for them to get the proper credentials to be considered for that hiring. And in a state that does struggle as greatly as we do, in a state that has as many rural districts as we have, it seems natural that we would at least consider providing an opportunity for these areas to be served properly. And we're not certifying any group right now to provide this service. We're simply asking them and asking districts to come forward with potential alternatives for us to consider. And if those alternatives aren't good ones, then we shouldn't allow them. But if they are good ones, then we should. You know why? Because it's in the best interest of the students, and it's in the best interest of the district. So I would ask that we move on this topic, and let's approve it. Thank you.
Ms. Hill?
With that being said, I will have to disagree with my colleague. For an individual who works in the special education arena and who understands special education and the population that teachers have to serve, which is very, very critical, and you have to understand the knowledge of the students that you're dealing with and their exceptionalities as well. So with that being said, I have listened to the conversation, I have listened to the Board of Regents, I have listened to some of my colleagues on the board. What I would like to do, I would like to offer a motion to ensure, because this is very critical when you're dealing with this population of students. So I would like to put a motion out there to ensure the rigorous process to approve the providers, to make sure that the process that the board decides to allow these providers to come is very rigorous, but not only rigorous, that the review process is equivalent to the university review process and how we review our university Department of Education. and to make sure that they're held to the same standards
Okay.
throughout the state. So I'd like to put a motion out there for that.
Did you get that?
I second.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going to make a comment. I think it's out of order. We can't set up a process for something we don't even allow yet. Okay, we need to take this step that would in fact allow someone to come forward to us, and then we can outline the process with how that's done. I don't mind the motion, I just don't think it's relevant at this point.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take the motion, and there's a second. Are there any objections to the motion?
I would just
Oh,
like to
there
make one
seems
more
to be
comment.
questions. Okay, so we're going to go Ms. Bofi and then Dr. Moranti will come in.
So the part about this discussion that I'm struggling with is the focus on inputs. I mean, we can talk about standards for universities all day. We've had standards for universities for a very long time, and we still end up with variations in quality. So just because someone's certified doesn't necessarily mean that that person would meet my expectations as a parent. And so I think, I mean, it sounds like this has been a discussion about guarding bureaucracy, and I'm just really struggling with that. I look forward to the day when we start having conversations about how we make sure that the people teaching our students are the most effective. And I really thought we had moved forward there, but it seems like we're using an old paradigm to talk about universities. I mean, pieces of paper are one thing. What I understand as a parent that's most important to me is what happens with my child in the classroom. And so whether someone gains that experience through a university that's been around for a long time or through a private provider who's figured out another way to help people be effective with students, like that's, I think that's what we have to figure out. And so I really am struggling with this heavy inputs focus of this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Moranti.
I guess I'm just not thinking that it's guarding bureaucracy. I'm still looking at standards. And I think that we do have an opportunity. If we pass this, it says the proposed policy will allow state-approved non-university private providers. I just need a lot more information from the private providers, but also from us, and also to see how this is going to work before we vote on this. Let them bring their proposals to us. Let us see what we're going to be demanding for an ongoing rigorous review. Let us be sure that it's not about either or. It could be both and. I just need to hear more information about how this is going to work so that the private providers have an opportunity to bring to the table to say how they're going to do this and how they're going to meet those rigorous standards. It also says that the providers will be monitored for quality in accordance with Bulletin 996 that is in place. I want to hear how that's going to happen before I do pass my vote.
Superintendent.
Here's what I would propose. First, I am happy to, I will invite the superintendents of these three districts to take their full day to come up from their locations and spend the day with us in Baton Rouge with their private providers and share with you the proposals before this happens. That should have happened today. It didn't happen, and I'm not going to ask people to vote on something that they don't fully understand to allow someone to vote on the same people to come back and give the same presentation when they come to us for approval. So I'll ask that the committee shelve this item until the next meeting and then come back. Now let me say one more thing. I find it so utterly offensive that some people have used this in the audience and on the board as a platform to denounce people as privatizers or somehow as motivated by other motivations other than trying to do the right thing for schools. This was motivated by superintendents who have the best interests of their kids at heart, coming to us and saying, we need a solution because what we've got is not working for us. You will see that in the flesh when they come here and deliver this proposal, and I ask that it be a swift discussion in light of that. I apologize for not having them here today. We will have them here at the next meeting so you feel better informed, and I hope that we can move on from this discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent. With that.
So we have a motion on the floor. Would you like to remove your motion, Ms. Hill? And
Yes,
to
and he proposed
amend
that-
it to defer until
Yeah,
April
to
of
defer,
20?
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion removed. Okay. With that, we are moving.
Do we have a second for that?
Do we have a second?
Defer.
Okay. Second by Mr. Garvey. Okay, having no objections.
Object.
Mr. Romer?
Object. Why would we defer? It makes no sense to me. All we're giving people is an opportunity to come to us and make a proposal, which we then can judge based on the merit of the proposal. And this is bureaucracy at its worst, and it's why we're last, and it's why we don't get anything done.
Okay. Dr. Beebe.
And Mr. Romer, I take offense. We as a board should, and I applaud Dr. Moranti, we want to know what we're supporting. We could
You're
possibly
supporting the opportunity for somebody to come make a presentation to us to get approved or not, and we can turn them down if they're not worth a darn.
Can I just say,
Yes,
here's why I think, while I agree with everything Mr. Romer just said, why these people should be able to come. Because people today have impeached the character of people who are not here to defend themselves and articulate their vision for children. And I believe they should be able to come and show those of you who have called them privatizing salesmen that they are actually visionary educators. It's offensive, and they need a chance to come here and articulate their vision. I regret that it has resulted in more bureaucracy. I completely agree with Mr. Romer. I just feel like that's the best course of action.
Dr. Beebe.
Superintendent White, I take exception to your comments because, in fact, I represent Lafourche Parish. But as a policymaker, I want to be assured that quality is in place. I have not decided what, as it relates to their programs, because I haven't heard it. And that's one criticism I have of your administration. We are not, you do not communicate effectively with us. Now, that's not to say some members on this board don't have a preview of what is to be. But I want to know what I'm supporting. And to suggest that there's an impeachment, I strongly resent it.
All right. Superintendent, would you like to respond to that?
I would like to, but will decline to.
Okay. All right. So I believe what we're going to do is actually...
The motion is to defer until April.
Yeah, the motion is to
Do we
defer.
have
We're
a
going to do a
second?
roll call vote on the motion to defer. Okay. Motion's to defer. Do we have a second?
We have a second.
We have a
I
second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Garvey seconded. Dr. Beebe?
Yes.
Dr. Beebe votes yes. Ms. Bofi?
Yes.
Ms. Bofi votes yes. Ms. Bradford is not in attendance. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey votes yes. Mr. Gio?
No.
Mr. Gio votes no. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Hill votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Dr. Moranti?
Yes.
Dr. Moranti votes yes. Mr. Romer?
No.
Mr. Romer votes no. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Orange Jones? Do you
Yes.
wish to vote? Ms. Orange Jones votes yes. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That was the final item on the agenda. This concludes our formal meeting, but before we move on, I'd like the superintendent to take a quick point of privilege.
Members, yesterday the department announced its 2014-15 curriculum strategy. We are building on last year's strategy to provide additional reviews of published curriculum guidebooks to allow teachers a specific guidance as to their curriculum decisions in English and math, as well as trainings on all of those curricula that are aligned tightly with the Common Core state standards. I wanted just to give you a full copy, just to show you, of the hardbound curricula in paper. I wanted just to share these with you and to tell you that I'm going to leave these are the first copies hot off the press. I'm going to leave these here in case you'd like to come by and review them. I wanted you to be able to see them. And I know members of the audience, you'll of course have a chance to look at them as well. But here they are. They're in paper and they're right here on the desk. So I just wanted to pass that out to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next committee will convene in about 10 minutes.
Thank you.